A commission produced the United Nations' most detailed examination yet of the October 7th attacks and war in Gaza, released today by a group of independent experts saying that Israeli forces and Palestinian militants engaged in war crimes, including sexual and gender-based violence. Israel is also accused of committing crimes against humanity. Now, Israel did not cooperate and refuted the report, which was led by former Chief of Human Rights Council Navi Pillay. The report said, quote, many abductions were carried out with significant physical, mental, and sexual violence and degrading, humiliating treatment. The report went on to say women and women's bodies were used as victory trophies by male perpetrators. Hamas also rejected these accusations. Meanwhile, the two sides still appear to be far apart on the latest ceasefire approval, with Hamas offering new amendments. Here with us to discuss all of this is Aaron David Miller, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Foundation for International Peace and a former advisor on Arab-Israeli negotiations at the State Department. Aaron, thank you for joining us. Aaron, at this moment in time, we have Secretary Blinken traveling the Middle East, trying to get a ceasefire deal. What's at stake for the Biden administration right now?
I mean, look, the administration has to find a way to de-escalate the war, and for any number of reasons that have a lot to do with morality and ethics, continued violence, the president's political prospects, and U.S. interests. The administration has looked for a way, so far unsuccessfully, to find a way to de-escalate the war. And the ceasefire efforts now in their third or fourth month have proven so far to have produced some gains in November, a release of 105 hostages for 400 or so Palestinian prisoners, and a week respite from the Israeli-Hamas confrontation. But right now, it seems to me these negotiations based on Israeli proposals, which the president articulated at the end of May, have reached a sort of impasse. I think the negotiations will continue, but there's no indication whatsoever that we're on the cusp of reaching a comprehensive commitment, either by Hamas or the government of Israel, to cease the war and begin the painful process of reconstruction.
Well, and is that not the case because it remains the Israeli government's position that Hamas must be removed, or at least its top, leaders defeated or surrendered or into exile, Yahya Sinwar at the very least? That the Israeli position is that that government, that administration, needs to be not in control of Gaza anymore, and whereas the U.S. and obviously Hamas's leadership, Hamas wants to remain in power. The U.S., wants a ceasefire between the two groups. But Israel says they're willing to, so far at least, continue this until they have Hamas defeated to a more satisfactory degree. At which point, what is the basis for which there could be a ceasefire if Israel wants to continue this until Hamas is destroyed or gives in?
Well, the broader issue is in any negotiation. It's urgency. It's a willingness and ability to close a negotiation on the part of two parties. And, of course, the mediator's efforts. And right now, there is just no urgency. There's no urgency on the part of Hamas. Hamas believes it's winning. It's trading time, tunnels, and hostages for what it wants, which is the cessation of hostilities, the survival of the senior leadership, Mohammed Deif, Yahya Sinwar, his brother Mohammed, and their families, and a role in post-conflict Gaza. The Israelis, on the other hand, are not prepared to withdraw from Gaza with no security architecture to prevent a recurrence of October 7th, and are committed to trying to find a way, as is the president, I might add, in the remarks he gave at the end of May, to a post-Gaza future that does not include Hamas. So the reality is, at best, even if the two sides could be pushed to agree to a comprehensive three-phase proposal, the best you're going to end up doing under these circumstances is a phase one, which is a limited exchange of hostages, the women, the elderly, the infirm, in exchange for an asymmetrical number of Palestinians, surging humanitarian assistance in Gaza, and a 6-week ceasefire. If the administration could get that, maybe they'd have something on which to build. But even that, under these circumstances, I think is a long shot.
Aaron, Secretary Blinken said that he had received assurances from Prime Minister Netanyahu that they would hold up their end of the deal. At this point, what do you make of Netanyahu and his repeated assurances?
I mean, just the facts here. This is an Israeli proposal. It was initially conceived weeks ago based on a set of Israeli ideas. That proposal was endorsed by the War Cabinet. That means the current Prime Minister of Israel, the current Minister of Defense, Ron Dermer, the former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Benny Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot, who are no longer in the government. The government of Israel, the full cabinet, has yet to endorse the proposal. The issue now is whether or not what Hamas has come back with, is it a yes, but parading as a no, or is it a yes, but as the Secretary of State, I think, said today, part of which is problematic, part of which they can work with. And we don't know the answer to that question because none of us has seen the 4.5-page detailed proposal on which all of these discussions are based. But it just seems to me, given the fundamental mistrust and suspicion between Israel and Hamas, given the curious nature of these negotiations where the principal Palestinian decision maker is ensconced below ground in a tunnel somewhere, and the indirect nature of these talks involving both the Qataris, the Egyptians, the head of CIA, Bill Burns, the head of Israel's Mossad, David Barnea, that this negotiation is going to have two speeds. It's already demonstrated that, slow and slower.
Does the Biden administration actually have the ability to, use leverage over Israel to maybe make them take a deal that is more urgent, given Biden's political needs, which you alluded to, his upcoming campaign? We give Israel a tremendous amount of support, both literally financial and support at the United Nations and in other ways. And yet Biden has signaled these kind of red lines about Rafah and some other things, and Israel seems to me to have plunged ahead anyway. Does the Biden administration have the ability to actually motivate the Israel side to seek a quicker solution, a ceasefire, despite that we should, my question being, we should have that ability because we give them a lot, but it doesn't seem to motivate, or that the this comes with strings attached part of it comes into play.
Look, from the beginning of this conflict, the U.S. has clearly had significant leverage with Israel. They could have restricted or conditioned U.S. military assistance. They haven't done that. They could have introduced their own Security Council resolution highly critical of the Israelis, or voted for someone else's. They haven't done that. Or they could have abandoned the entire notion of a negotiated deal between Israel and Hamas and joined the international chorus, searching for a complete cessation of hostilities, an immediate cessation of hostilities. The Biden administration hasn't done any of those things. And it hasn't done any of those things for three reasons. Number one, and foreign policy is fine. Every president, and I've worked for a half a dozen administrations, brings their own sensibilities, prejudgments to the office. This president has a very solid commitment to the security of Israel, the people of Israel, the idea of Israel, not so much to the Israeli prime minister. He's not inclined to use that sort of pressure. Second is the politics. When the administration did pause a single shipment of munitions, even while they pressed Congress to go ahead with $14 billion in the national security supplemental, the Republican reaction was accusatory, accusing the administration of betraying the Israelis. So yes, while this is costing the president, he's paying a price on the Democratic side, there's also a price to be paid among conservative Democrats and Republicans, particularly big donors. And finally, there is the reality that the administration believes, and I would concur with this, that the only way you're going to get a de-escalation and an end to this conflict is through an Israeli-Hamas deal. That's the only way. And in order to get that deal, you need the assent and the approval of Israel and Hamas. A public breach and break with the government of Israel, and certainly the use of heavy pressure, is not going to motivate the Israelis to come to terms with this deal any sooner. And as Nair and I have talked about this, in a conflict in which both sides perceive their vital interests to be at stake, and they do, the influence of external parties is limited. I mean, the Middle East is literally littered with the remains of great powers who believe they can impose their will on smaller ones. So no, after 9 months, the administration has been reluctant to impose a single cost or consequence that normal humans, the four of us, would describe as sustained and serious pressure. And I think past his prologue here, I don't think you can expect a break between Biden and the Israeli government.
Aaron, thank you so much for giving us the background and the insights to understand exactly why we are at an impasse in the Israel-Hamas war today. More Rising after this.